Welcome back to some new PettyRevenge stories, where people share small victories over those who wronged them. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now, let's start with the first story, shall we? It's called Destroyed His Career. My mom is incredibly successful in a very niche but very lucrative field of business. This allowed my dad to be a stay-at-home for me and my siblings, to get a good education. When I graduated from college, I decided to go into the same field as my mom. While I love her and our relationship is good, I very much did not want to only be viewed as her kid, or receive special treatment due to how well regarded she is. So I used my dad's surname, and generally keep who my mom is to myself. I also avoided coming to work for her. In my field and country, it's generally accepted that people are hired for a trial period, at the end of which either the employee or employer can cut ties, with no fines or compensation required. I went to work at one company, very niche market, very few employment opportunities. I went in for my trial period, and everyone seemed pretty happy with me. I put out some fires, and one superior described me as a workhorse, because I'm first to the office, last out the door. It goes pretty well, except for one colleague in my team. This dude is a huge jerk. I'm a bit of a people pleaser and try to be on good terms with everyone, but jerk will have none of it. Dude is incredibly rude. He keeps being very confrontational. Like if a colleague, not just me, was getting any sort of acknowledgement, jerk would belittle them and their accomplishment. If someone was saying they had a rough time with something, jerk would pop up, going, "Oh yeah, I did that a while back. It was super easy." Whenever someone tried talking about future plans with me, jerk would go, "Oh yeah, we'll see about that." He also apparently says some very unkind things about my appearance and masculinity, but those at least he had the decency to say behind my back, and I only learned about them later. This guy was incredibly mean, for apparently no reason, except trying to make himself look better by making everyone else look worse. This one thing wasn't true to me specifically, because I'm a male, but his meanness seemed to apply especially to women. A few comments were about how working in this field isn't for moms, and they should be raising kids or whatever, and some other very bad stuff. But management seemed pretty content keeping him around, because apparently he was a pretty good worker, and they liked that he was ambitious. My trial period ends. I am offered a permanent position, but decide this is not the place for me, as I don't love being anybody's workhorse, and have very little interest in sticking around in jerk's vicinity. I respectfully inform them I will not be sticking around, and go find work elsewhere. On my last day, I come to say goodbye. Management says they are sorry to see me go. Colleagues wish me well, and say they are gonna miss me. Jerk goes, "Told you he wasn't gonna stick around. Maybe this field isn't for you either." He said it very loudly. I leave. I'm not very confrontational, and I don't have to deal with him anymore anyway, so I just go. Some time goes by. I am now employed elsewhere. I am happy and doing well. I love my work and my colleagues. I've been promoted, and I don't really think about jerk anymore. Except, apparently there's a relative influx of applicants from jerk's company. My boss knows I did a trial period over there, so whenever an applicant comes up, he asks me about my experience with them. There are very few people I dislike, so when asked, I usually give my honest opinion, which is usually very positive. But then, we suddenly received his application. My boss asks for my opinion, and I say, "Look, I have personal feelings about this person, and I can't be objective." Boss, knowing just how positive I usually am about basically everyone, asks me what's up, and eventually I tell him everything. Jerk obviously doesn't get hired. I assume that's the end of that. A few days later, we have family dinner. My mom asked me about the trial period I had at that company, if I know this guy. She knew there was a person I really didn't get along with at that company, and the terrible things they did. I tell her it was him. Obviously, she ain't gonna hire him either, especially given his views on women. My company ends up hiring one of jerk's company's former workers. Me and her are on great terms, and this is how I discover what happened there. Jerk got promoted, and that made a bunch of people wanna leave. This caused management to look into why, and why strong applicants were leaving after their trial period was over. Turned out it was Jerk. Someone had a talk with him, and from what I gather, he was not receptive to criticism. He was let go. This is when he applied to the company I work for, and to my mom's. From what I understand, he no longer works in our field. The next story is called Landlord Revenge. We own a dance studio. It doesn't make a lot, but it's not bad. At the end of the contract period, the landlord doubled the rent. That would take a lot of profit, so of course we could not accept it. Landlord took photos of the place, all decked out in mirrors, nice wall coverings, beautiful bathroom, and listed it as perfect for a dance or fitness studio, which it was, at that time. All these nice things belong to the business, which is in the contract. So do the aircons, the ducting, the wallpaper, even the partition walls we put in. In about 3 days we had the place gutted out, back to the concrete shell of a building. Everything was left as per the contract, fit for use. Once we had relocated to a new, cheaper property in a better part of town and started the necessary renovations, a past student mentioned she works for the main property listing website in this country. There are really no other options. She told us that if the listed pictures do not match what the property is like in real life, and if complaints are made of this, the listing will be reviewed and possibly removed. Strangely, 56 students and ex-students decided, with their partners and family, that the listed photos did not look like the breeze block large open space it was in reality. Both the realtors and landlords listings were removed, and they were blacklisted from the website. We now have a larger, nicer studio for 70% the original rental cost, and last time I drove by, the original space was still empty. The third story is called Airplane Pettiness. Yesterday I was flying to America from the UK. A mother and her apparently 18-year-old daughter were sitting next to me. She looked younger, but the mother gave her alcohol during the flight that she had ordered. So who knows? The whole flight the daughter had her shoes off and kept elbowing and kicking me with her stinky sock feet while talking loudly. At one point I was asleep and the daughter kicked me a rake and slapped me with her jacket. Right before landing, the two of them were physically fighting. Play or not, I got hit a few times and told them to be civilized. As soon as the fasten seatbelt sign came off, they got up and obviously were trying to force their way off the plane early. We were in the very back of the plane. I threw down my table and kept watching my program, trapping them, and told them, patience is a virtue. We'll be last off anyway. They were not pleased. When the rows in front were clearing out, I waited till the last second to close up, and as I got my bag out of the overhead, I put it on my seat, blocking them again, and accidentally hit the daughter with my jacket on the way out of the overhead, keeping her back. There was a very large family behind us that made their way behind me in the aisle, blocking them in again. I didn't see them at baggage till 5 minutes after I made it. Didn't affect them a lot, but sure made me feel good. It's the little things. The last story is called His License. I'm a lab technician. There's this licensed scientist who is practically hated by everyone, but our manager and some supervisor that handles lab safety. These two are the only reason he hasn't been fired yet. This guy is so arrogant, he makes a point to tell every lab tech he comes across that he's a senior scientist with a license. So work should only be ran when he is physically watching us. Meanwhile, other senior scientists tell us to call them if we need help. The techs make a point to avoid assisting him whenever possible. One day I was scheduled to work with Arrogant and another scientist, Good Guy. There were 2 tests that needed to be ran. Arrogant had partially set up the machine for one of the tests. When I started checking the pipetting tips to make sure they were all the same size. Recently someone had accidentally loaded a set of tips with different sizes onto the machine. Fortunately, Good Guy caught it before the machine started and prevented a crash. Arrogant did not like what I was doing, so he stopped me and said, "What are you doing?" You are working under my license. If you set up the machine, then I would be the one double checking your work. Since I am the one setting it up, I don't need you double checking my work. I was going to replace one of the small tip racks he had loaded, because I noticed a few bigger tips were mixed in. Instead, I placed the tips back and walked away, while giving the biggest eye roll possible. I began helping Good Guy with the second test instead, who had just returned from a meeting and was happy to have me assisting. About 10 minutes later, there was a loud crunch and screams from Arrogant. As predicted, when the machine picked up the mixed tip rack, it pushed so far down that the tip snapped into pieces and caused the reagents to splash all over the machine stack. Almost 100 samples were contaminated, and 2 hours of work was lost. Arrogant got written up for the lost work, and got yelled at by 2 supervisors. Other techs and I still refuse to work with him to this day. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.